The representation of brilliance has always coincided with the concept of mental illness. How a person interacts with struggle or grief caused by an outside factor, like a mental disorder, can determine how they perceive aspects of the environment around them. Multiple modern texts explore the subject matter of the compelling perceptions of the human mind. A Beautiful Mind, directed by Ron Howard, and S-Town, narrated by Brian Reed, both explore the interesting ideas of the human mind by presenting the impact of the fine line between genius and mental instability on the main protagonists. Beautiful Mind, composed by Ron Howard, is a biographical film about the mathematician John Nash, whose work on the groundbreaking theories and ideas for his entire career was dominated by debilitating effects of schizophrenia. This Town is a podcast presented by the narrator Brian Reed, who follows the story of a man named John B. McLemore, a severely depressed antique clock restorer in the U.S. state of Alabama, who contacted Reed about a murder of a man being brushed under the rug by a wealthy local family-run mill. The representation of genius and mental illness within A Beautiful Mind is viewed within the first social interaction John Nash experiences at Princeton University, in which Nash is attending a formal meet and greet with other university students. Within the scene, Nash is shown to be analyzing a person's tie, comparing it to a bowl of lemons and a glass reflection, then bluntly stating that could be a mathematical explanation for how bad your tie is. The issues of special effects, which highlight the lemons and the glass reflection, and the sarcastic tone within Nash's dialogue, allow the viewers to see the mind of Nash and foreshadow the effects of schizophrenia has on his life by displaying him as socially inept in greeting someone politely. These methods exemplify interesting ideas of brilliance and mental instability within Nash's mind early in the film. Although the representation of genius and mental disorder within John B. McLemore is present within his pessimistic tone, especially in this iteration of dialogue. You're beginning to figure it out now, aren't you? So why don't I move? There's got to be people in Fallujah right now, or Beirut, that just asked each other the same question. Why the hell don't you get out of here, Hassan? And Hassan's answer is, I don't know. Hassan has probably gone out there and made a sand maze or something. Jay's mother can't decide which one of her hijabs she's going to wear that day, and she ends up peeing all over herself and he has to clean her up or some damn something. He keeps thinking, okay, maybe one day it'll get better, though he secretly knows it never will. These rhetorical questions and characterization exemplify the interesting aspects of John B. McLemore to the listener by exploring his knowledge with the use of jargon and references to his own life by using the characterization of Hassan to present the contrasting ideas of genius of McLemore's knowledge of the modern world affairs within the mention of Fallujah and Beirut, and the debilitating mental instability that keeps John B. McLemore stuck within a place he knows will never get better. The subtle effects of John Nash's delusions and effect of his schizophrenia within the Pentagon scene, where he is invited to crack an intercepted Soviet code. Nash is shown the codes pasted up on the wall, and the camera pans around him as he takes in all the information. Then the special effects start to make the codes come off the wall, make them bold or glow in the scene. This segment presents the passing of time, while John Nash solves the codes, showing agents pacing or sitting down around Nash. Ron Howard uses this to present how his mental illness assists Nash's genius, which is presented to the viewer by the special effects used to make the numbers pop out, which helps John Nash to solve the Soviet code, and the panning shots used to show him deciphering all the data. These techniques show the audience how John Nash's genius utilizes his mental instability to help him solve mathematical equations. Representation of mental instability that resides within John B. McLemore is present when Brian Reed first meets McLemore. There's no nice to meet you back, no how you doing, no handshakes. John just takes off around the side of the house with a pack of dogs following him. This iteration illustrates how John B. McLemore's mental illness affects his social life, with the use of narration by Brian Reed exemplifies to the audience of Reed's reaction to the lack of social cues from McLemore. This podcast segment represents the enthralling ideas of how John B. McLemore's mental state affects his interactions throughout his life. John Nash, although never overcoming the extreme effects of his schizophrenia, still had to come to terms with the delusions he had seen throughout his adulthood were not real. When Alicia Nash, Nash's wife, flees and attempts to drive away with their child because John Nash accidentally knocks her to the ground and fighting with his delusion William Parcher, Nash runs after her car after having an epiphany. He stands in front of Alicia Nash's cars and yells, "She never gets old. Marcy can't be real. She never gets old." Ron Howard uses tone within this scene's dialogue, which emphasizes Nash's realization to show the importance of this epiphany to the audience. This part of the film represents the compelling idea that genius can still overcome aspects of mental illness. The representation of John B. McLemore's mental state and self-awareness of his situation is in this iteration. Saved on John's Computer is a comic. When I think about it now, I realize it captures his worldview perfectly. It's 3 drinking glasses with arms and legs and cute little faces, each with the same amount of liquid inside. The first one smiles and says, "I'm half full." The next one frowns and says, "I'm half empty." The last one throws both of his arms around and says, "I think this is piss." These comics, using metaphorical language and tone, illustrate how Macklemore depicts his circumstances to the listener, which exemplifies Macklemore's brilliance in acknowledging his situation, describing it in his pessimistic way as a glass of piss. Therefore, the interesting concepts of the human intellect are both present within the modern text of Beautiful Mind, with John Nash and how he overcame aspects of his mental disorder with the use of his discoveries in S-Town, which shows how the lack of support and the only company of your intellect can lead to the spiral of pessimistic behaviors and emotional disorders.